The small town of Maplewood slept beneath a blanket of winter fog the morning Eleanor Reed turned 70. Her modest home sat at the edge of Willow Lane, a place once filled with children's laughter, family dinners, and the scent of apple pies cooling on her windowsill. But now it echoed only silence. The walls carried faded memories, the kind that warmed and wounded all at once. Eleanor had raised 3 children, Thomas, Grace, and Linda. Once upon a time, she believed they would always stay close. But life had hardened them. Greed and distance had replaced affection. They called her occasionally, usually when bills piled up or when they needed something. The woman who had given everything now received only polite indifference. That morning, Eleanor stood in front of her small mirror, smoothing the wrinkles in her sweater. Her hands trembled as she pinned the old brooch her late husband, George, had given her 50 years ago. "Happy birthday to me," she whispered to the empty room. Later, she walked to the corner store, the same one where George used to buy his morning paper. The clerk, a kind young woman, smiled at her. "Morning, Mrs. Reed. Celebrating something special today." Eleanor chuckled softly. 70 isn't exactly special unless you're still standing. The clerk laughed and handed her a small lottery ticket. "Well, you never know, this could be your lucky day." Eleanor slipped the ticket into her purse, not thinking twice. That night, after a quiet dinner alone, she turned on the TV. The local station began reading out the winning lottery numbers. Out of habit, she pulled the ticket from her purse and began checking. Her heart started pounding. One number matched, then another, then all 6. For a moment, she thought her old eyes were deceiving her. She adjusted her glasses, checked again. Every number was perfect. She had just $1.03, $133 million. The ticket slipped from her trembling fingers onto the table. Silence filled the room, followed by the sound of her heartbeat echoing in her ears. She whispered, "Oh, George, what do I do now?" She could almost hear his voice, gentle, amused. "Now, Ellie, don't let the wrong ones know too soon." Eleanor sat there for a long time, tears sliding down her cheeks. It wasn't joy that filled her heart, it was confusion. After years of loneliness, what could this money possibly buy her that love hadn't already abandoned? The next morning, she drove to the state lottery office. She arrived early, her gray coat buttoned up to her neck, her hands clutching the winning ticket like a fragile secret. After signing the documents, the official congratulated her and offered to arrange financial advisors. She refused politely. "I'd like this to stay private," she said firmly. "No announcements, no press." She returned home with a calm face but a racing mind. She contacted her lawyer, Mr. Jacobs, and arranged to transfer the money discreetly into a private trust. Not a single soul in her family knew, and that's how she wanted it. When her children called days later, none mentioned her birthday. Thomas complained about his mortgage, Grace talked about her business struggles, and Linda simply asked if Eleanor had mailed the check she promised for the grandkids. Eleanor realized something that evening. Money didn't change who people were, it simply revealed them. Only her grandson, Ethan, remembered. He showed up with a homemade cake, shyly holding it in both hands. "I know it's not much, Grandma, but I wanted you to have something sweet." Tears welled in her eyes as she hugged him. "Oh, darling, this is the sweetest gift I've ever had." They spent the evening together, eating cake and laughing over old photos. Ethan told her about his job at the mechanic's shop and how he was saving to attend college. He didn't ask for anything, he simply cared. That night, as Eleanor watched him drive away in his rusty old car, she made a silent promise. She would find out who truly loved her, not the wealthy woman, but the broke grandmother. And so she hid her secret fortune, putting away the evidence of her luck. From that moment on, she would live as though she had nothing, because only then could she discover who was worth everything. The first signs of spring brought blooming tulips to Maplewood, and New idea to Eleanor's mind. For weeks, she had stared at her children's names flashing on her phone screen, always attached to requests. Mom, can you lend me a few thousand? Or, we're short on rent. Can you help? Never a simple, how are you, Mom? But Ethan, he was different. He called her every Sunday, not out of duty, but genuine affection. He came by after work, covered in grease from the auto shop, to mow her lawn or fix her leaky faucet. He never complained, never hinted at needing money. His quiet kindness reminded her of George, humble, dependable, good-hearted. One evening, Eleanor sat in her living room, sipping tea and staring at the old family photo on the mantel. Her children were smiling, young, innocent, unaware of how time would turn them into strangers. She sighed deeply, setting her cup down. It's time, she whispered to herself. If love has a price, I need to know who can afford it. The next week, she began her act. She called each of her children, her voice trembling slightly for effect. I'm afraid I've lost my savings, she said softly. Some investments went bad. I might lose the house. Thomas was the first to respond, though not as she hoped. Mom, that's terrible, he said, sounding distracted. But well, you shouldn't have been playing around with money at your age. I can't really help right now. I'm struggling myself. Maybe sell the house. Grace's reply was colder. Mom, I told you before to let me manage your finances. You never listen. Anyway, I can't get involved. We're already behind on our taxes. Linda, the youngest, sighed impatiently. Oh, Mom, that's so unfortunate. But honestly, you're old now. Maybe it's time to move into a care home or something. I'll look up a cheap one. The words stung more than she expected. They didn't even ask if she was okay. None of them offered to visit. None offered comfort. But Ethan came over the next morning, unannounced. He knocked, holding a small grocery bag. Grandma, I heard you weren't feeling well. I brought you some soup and bread, he said with his usual gentle smile. Eleanor blinked in surprise. You heard. Mom mentioned you were having a rough time. I just wanted to check on you. He cleaned the kitchen, fixed the creaky door, and sat with her for hours. They talked about his dreams, how he wanted to open his own auto repair shop one day, how money was tight, but he'd manage. When he left, Eleanor felt something warm flicker inside her chest, something she hadn't felt in years, hope. The days turned into weeks. Her children grew distant, but Ethan remained constant. He brought groceries, paid for small repairs with his own paycheck, even skipped nights out with friends to spend time with her. Eleanor often pretended to doze off, just to watch him quietly tidy up the living room before leaving. One rainy night, as thunder rolled over Maplewood, Eleanor sat by the window, watching the storm. She looked down at the gold envelope hidden inside her desk, the one containing her bank papers, proof of her $333 million fortune. She thought about the irony. Her family thought she had nothing, and yet she possessed more than they could imagine. But what mattered wasn't the number on a paper, it was the measure of the hearts around her. The next Sunday, she invited all her children for dinner, her first family gathering in months. She made their favorite dishes, baked the same apple pie she used to when they were young. But when they arrived, their smiles didn't reach their eyes. They looked around her house like vultures circling prey. So, Mom, Thomas began, setting down his fork, have you figured out what you'll do with the house? You can't maintain this place on your own. Eleanor smiled faintly. I thought I might sell it, maybe move in with one of you. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut the air. Grace looked down at her plate, pretending to adjust her napkin. Linda cleared her throat. Well, Linda said awkwardly, our apartment is small, and the kids need their space. Eleanor nodded, hiding her heartbreak behind a gentle smile. She looked across the table at Ethan, who sat quietly, his brow furrowed in anger and disbelief. You can stay with me, Grandma, he said suddenly. It's not much, but you'll always have a place. His words silenced the room. Grace scoffed, Thomas rolled his eyes, and Linda muttered something about dramatic gestures, but Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you, dear," she whispered. That night, when everyone had gone, Eleanor stood at the doorway watching Ethan help wash the dishes. "You remind me so much of your grandfather," she said softly. He looked up, confused but touched. "Was he kind too?" She smiled. "No, he was good. And goodness, my dear boy, is rarer than gold." As he left, Eleanor made up her mind. Her plan had worked. The truth of their hearts had revealed itself. The greedy would soon learn the cost of their cruelty, and the kind would be rewarded beyond their wildest dreams. In her quiet living room, she whispered into the still night air, "They wanted to see me broke. Let's see how they react when they realize I was never poor, only disappointed." Eleanor's quiet little home had become her stage, and every act of kindness or cruelty was part of a truth she was slowly uncovering. It had been nearly 3 months since she had told her family she was broke. Her savings, they believed, were gone. Her children rarely called anymore. The few times they did, it was never to ask how she was doing, only to confirm whether she had sold the house yet. Ethan, on the other hand, came every weekend without fail. Rain or shine, tired or busy, he was always there. He fixed her leaky roof, helped her plant flowers in the garden, and made her laugh with his clumsy attempts at baking. His warmth filled the spaces her own children had left cold. One afternoon, Eleanor invited him inside for tea. The golden sunlight spilled through the window, dust motes dancing in the light like tiny secrets. She watched Ethan pour sugar into her cup, just as George used to. Her heart ached with both pride and sorrow. "Ethan," she began gently, "you've done so much for me, more than anyone." He smiled shyly. "You're my grandma. That's what family does." She studied his face, honest, unguarded. "You'd be surprised how many forget that." That night, after he left, she took out the locked box from under her bed, the one holding her secret. Inside were the official lottery papers, several legal documents, and a sealed envelope addressed to Ethan Reed. She had spent nights working with her lawyer, Mr. Jacobs, to create a trust fund worth $10 million in Ethan's name. He wouldn't know about it yet, not until the time was right. She also instructed Mr. Jacobs to donate the majority of her